Are you ready to get technical? I hope so. This lesson is all about shape, which I've divided into silhouette and proportion. Ultimately, the shape of an outfit is all about figuring out what story you want the eye to follow. Proportion can seem a little bit complicated, but we'll go over everything. First though, we're gonna start with silhouette. It's the easier of the two when it comes to shape. Silhouette is also pretty self-explanatory. It's the overall outline of the outfit. If we think of traditional fashion silhouettes, we think of A-line dresses, trumpet skirts, bishop sleeves, trapeze dresses. There are lots of silhouettes out there that have technical names, but I'm gonna take an even further step back and make it even more simple, especially if we are beginners and we just want to know what silhouettes we like and don't like. So I put silhouettes on a spectrum, like a lot of elements. On one end of the spectrum, there's clean, crisp, and sharp lines. And on the other end, loose, billowy, flowy, and frilly lines. In between, I would think of relaxed. Something like a pair of jeans that is a little bit more wide leg or a little bit more of a relaxed fit. If we're looking at silhouette and outfits can have a range of silhouettes. They can land on one end of the spectrum and be like crisp head to toe, or they can land on the other end and be very flowy head to toe, or outfits can have a mix of both and create a little bit of that contrast or tension that we like. How far you go on which end of the spectrum and how you mix the silhouettes is going to be entirely up to you, your taste, and the overall look and feel that you want to achieve. Waist definition is also an important piece with silhouette. It can be manufactured really easily, simply by adding a belt. Now you're not going to like this, but I don't believe that there is a magic ratio or rule to mix silhouettes in the right way, because I don't think there are right or wrong ways to style yourself. Ultimately, it requires experimentation and figuring out what ratio of crisp versus soft and relaxed you want. That's why these are tools and not rules. Let's talk about silhouette and how it relates to personal style. Silhouette does play a big role in the overall style vibe. Think about it. When you see sharp and structured silhouettes, what do you think of? It tends to come across as crisp, polished, classic. A lot of these words come to mind, or even edgy, you know, a little bit of that rock and roll, like rougher vibe. Whereas when we think or see softer silhouettes or figure-hugging silhouettes that outline the curves of the body, we think perhaps of more romantic, relaxed, ease, and just an overall more delicate vibe. I personally think an outfit with both of these offers, again, as I mentioned, that little bit of contrast. But you might not be into contrast, and that's okay. All answers are right here, as long as you're experimenting and ending up with something that feels good to you. Much like Style Vibe, you get to adjust that ratio so that you come up with what you want. So let's look at some outfit examples now, just by isolating and identifying the silhouette. This look, I love it. I would say relaxed, tailored, head to toe. There's no strong contrast that I'm seeing, especially because the sweater is tied around his neck. So we can't really appreciate the softness and the slouchiness of it. So here, relaxed, head to toe, landing, I would say, right in the middle. And this lends to a very classic look. In this look, I think we have a really nice mix of soft and structure. The soft is coming from the flowy and the delicate silhouette of the dress. It's figure forming and it's got a bit of softness and movement to it. Whereas the denim jacket, normally we would look at a denim jacket and say, okay, it's not like super crisp and polished, but in contrast with the nice flowiness of the yellow dress, it does add a little bit of that structure, and that's a really cool look. I also think the cowboy boots add a bit of structure too, simply because of the architectural nature of them. So this is a really cool mix. This is an example of soft silhouette head to toe. Again, like our relaxed look, it's all one type of silhouette. It conveys a very romantic, feminine, but because of the color and the asymmetric hemline, still a really interesting and bold look. We'll get into hemlines and color as well in other lessons. In this look, there's a really beautiful mix of sharp, clean lines with the blazer layered over a very soft and romantic blouse. And that blouse isn't even, I would say, a relaxed fit. That is totally on the other end of the spectrum. So you can see how pairing that romance with the structure looks really good together. Let's get into proportions. If silhouette is the two-dimensional shape of an outfit, then I see proportions as the three-dimensional shape of an outfit. You can play with proportions using two things: volume and fit, and the vertical and horizontal line. Before we get into playing with proportions with clothing, it's really important that you understand the proportions of your own body first. That way, you know how to choose and manipulate the shapes that will give the look that you want to achieve. Now, before we get into measuring to understand your own proportions a little bit better, I just want to say that I will be talking a little bit about body and body image in the next short section. So if you feel triggered by this at all, maybe take a break and come back to it when you're feeling ready. I do think that it can be really empowering to understand your own body proportions. It gives you the control and the power to choose clothes and shapes so that you are sharing the shape of your body that you want to the best. I know we've been led to believe otherwise, but there is no perfect proportion for bodies or even for an outfit. I think it's entirely up to you whether you want to create something that balances your proportions, or perhaps you want to create a look that really over dramatizes them and shows off your different proportions. It'll be entirely up to you, and there is so much power in that. It does take a lot of rewiring of our brains to remember that our bodies are what they are and they are beautiful as is. The other thing that is important to remember is that your overall height doesn't have a huge effect on proportions. I would often get clients asking or saying, oh, I'm petite, so that won't look good on me. But it's not so much about your overall height. What are your proportions? So don't discount an entire style or styling technique just based on your height. Start to switch your mindset into thinking about the proportions of your body first. So let's get into the measurements that will help you. Whenever I would have to style models without seeing them before we all showed up on set for a shoot, I would always get shoulder to shoulder, bust width, waist width, and hip width. You can see that all of these are the horizontal lines of your body that help you understand where the shape is coming from, how your proportions horizontally are distributed, and what you're going to want to accommodate when you're choosing clothes and shapes. This also will help you understand where and if you want to balance out some of those horizontal lines, and you can do that with volume. You can also do it with using line breaks in an outfit through hems, waistlines, and necklines. The other measurement that is important is the vertical lines of your body, and this is the torso to leg ratio. When it comes to measuring, a few things to keep in mind. The first is, what undergarments are you wearing? I would avoid a padded bra or a sports bra, as these can both inflate or diminish our actual bust size. So I would try a bralette or just like a more casual sports cotton bra without any padding or anything like that. Take the measuring tape or your string, wrap it around the widest part of your bust, not too loose, not too tight. Jot that down. Do the same thing with the smallest part of your waist or your torso. Wrap it around, and if you're using a string, same thing. Lay the string out along the length of the measuring tape. When it comes to your hips, same thing, wrap the soft measuring tape and the string around the widest part of your hips. That might be lower, higher on you. Just make sure you get the widest part because you're going to want to accommodate that in your clothing choices. Next, when it comes to measuring your torso to leg ratio, it's all about the inseam. Measure your overall height for this one. So grab a friend, or I find a solid measuring tape, like one of those construction ones, actually actually works better here if you're on your own, because then you can step on the bottom of the measuring tape and it stays still. So again, if you can get like a general sense, that's fine too. Next, you're gonna wanna measure your legs. And again, I find this one, if you're on your own, is easier so that you can step on the bottom of the measuring tape, but you're gonna wanna measure from your foot flat on the floor all the way up to the inside of your crotch. This is your inseam measurement. Next, what you're going to want to do is take your leg measurement and divide it by your overall height. Neutral leg to torso ratio is anywhere between 45 and 48%. If once you do the calculation, your legs represent less than 45%, then you know you've got a longer torso. If your legs represent over 48% of your total body height, then you've got longer legs. Another trick that you could do to measure this without doing all of those calculations would be to simply take two hands, put them together like one on top of the other like this, and place them directly underneath your bust line. If your bottom hand covers your belly button completely, that means you've got a shorter waist and longer legs. If your belly button is sitting right below your bottom hand, then your waist to leg ratio is neutral. If your belly button falls quite below your bottom hand, it means you've got a longer torso and shorter legs. None of these measurements are perfect or ideal or one better than the other. It really just means that now you know what waistlines you might want to choose or prefer over others, depending on if you want your legs to look long, if you want to show off your bust a little more. All are good. It just depends on what you want. So let's get into volume and fit and horizontal and vertical lines as they pertain to clothing and styling. Let's start with volume and fit. For the most part, when it comes to volume and fit, these also land on a spectrum. On one end of the spectrum, you've got big, voluminous, dramatic things. Think like big, wide leg pants, or dramatic poofy sleeves, or bubble hem skirts, or even T-length skirts that have a nice, big, voluminous effect on the bottom. On the other end of the spectrum, you've got something super fitted and form and figure hugging. Let's think leggings. In between those two, you've got something like, for example, a cigarette pant. It's got a little breathing room around the ankle, but it's not super form-fitted or overly voluminous. Next are the horizontal and vertical lines of a look. The horizontal lines, as we talked about when it comes to measurements, are shoulders, bust, waistline, and hips. You play with these lines via necklines, waistlines, whether you choose high, mid, low, and hemlines. And when I'm talking about hemlines, I'm not just talking about the hems of skirts, pants, and dresses. I'm also talking about the hemlines of a shirt, sweaters, tunics, tops. All of those things are fair game. The reason is that all of these create a visual break in the outfit when they are in different colors. So this is why color also can play into proportion as well. The higher the contrast within your look, particularly within garments that have a horizontal break between them, like a top and trousers, for example, the more our eye is going to be drawn to that visual break. So pay attention to where the horizontal lines are being drawn across your body and determine if you like it or not. Again, there's no right answer. It just depends on what you want. I would also argue that your feet cause a horizontal break as well, or the type of footwear that you choose. If you've got a really chunky shoe, or if you've got a really bright sock, for example, this also causes a horizontal break and can add more visual weight to a look. So you're also causing a break at the bottom of your body as well. If we want to talk about vertical lines, there are a few ways that you can create vertical lines on your body as well. Think of columns, wearing third layers or scarves, jackets, cardigans open across the body. Whether you do it just on the top half of your body or whether you're choosing to do this with a long line coat or cardigan, then you're creating a column. So this is how you can use vertical lines to draw the eye up and down. And you can also use it in conjunction with those horizontal line breaks as well. Now, if you add volume to the mix, the world is literally your oyster. I'm going to show you some examples where we isolate the proportions within outfits so that you can start identifying them and seeing outfits from this lens as well, and so you can start applying them to your own clothes. But a quick rule of thumb is generally when you have a larger contrast in proportions in the volume, then you've got a more dramatic look. You're really drawing the eye to where the volume is. And remember, sometimes color adds that volume too. Fewer contrasting proportions can create a more balanced or harmonious look. Let's take this look here first as an example. There is a horizontal line being drawn just below her hip line and at her ankle without a lot of definition. I would say this is creating definitely an interesting or dramatic look because we've got volume paired with volume. The reason why she doesn't look overwhelmed though is because there is a section that is fitted, and it's not necessarily happening because of a garment. It's just that she's showing some skin. We still see her arms and we still see her ankles. Plus the shoe has a low vamp, so we're seeing a lot of foot. So we're getting some of that vertical line at the bottom, plus the green in the shoe matches the green in the skirt. So our eye isn't breaking too much at the bottom of the look, and we're getting to appreciate the fit of the ankle. Same thing with the sleeves. We're getting to appreciate the fit because it's just like her arm, right? This is a really good example of keeping volume and fit fairly harmonious, but using very strong horizontal line breaks in the bottom half of the body. So you can see the cardigan, the skirt, neither have a crazy dramatic sense of volume. I would say they're both quite classic, falling in the middle of the volume versus fit spectrum. But it's the horizontal line breaks that are adding interest and allowing the eye to have a place to fall. This is happening because the cardigan is half tucked into the waistline, so we're definitely seeing a horizontal break there. This skirt waistline is a little bit high-waisted, and there are two horizontal breaks happening in the legs, in the bottom half of this look. So we've got the horizontal line break just above the knee, and the horizontal line break with the top of the sock. This is really breaking up the body visually, so it can kind of come across as a little bit of an eclectic look. In terms of neckline, we've also got a pretty solid break in the crew neck as well. So while this look from the volume and fit perspective feels very harmonious, we've got some drama happening and a lot of interest happening with those line breaks. Whether or not this is a quote-unquote flattering look doesn't really matter. This is a very artistic look. Let's look at this image here. There's a lot going on in terms of both a difference in volume and fit as well as horizontal lines. If we're looking at the difference in volume and fit, we've got the oversized blazer, which is really, this is very typical and on trend, but it's adding a lot of drama. It's creating a really strong shoulder, but it's contrasted completely with, I think, some short shorts under there, and we're seeing a lot of leg. So we've got some drama happening because of the big difference between volume and fit. We've also got almost like a naked sandal. So there's a lot of drama and interest in this look because of that strong contrast. A big strong boot instead of the almost naked sandal would balance out visually the volume of the blazer. And that's cool too. That could be a way to play with proportions, to make it feel almost like the look is more visually balanced. But as far as I'm concerned, this looks pretty good too. It adds more of that tension by having a simple naked sandal. But can you identify the horizontal line breaks happening here too? Right at the leg, but a high point in the leg. So a lot of times we think, oh, we have to show waist definition in order to not, be overwhelmed by oversized clothing. But here, that's already happening happening by showing so much leg. And the horizontal break is still happening high enough that we're still focusing so much on the top half. And we also have horizontal line breaks at the bottom in the shoe, at the ankle. However, because there is so much volume on the top, these fine horizontal line breaks on her ankle aren't so stark. Our eye isn't drawn so much to them. Our eye would be instead drawn to a bigger boot, or for example, like we saw in that second example, a dark sock where there's harsher contrast. Here, we're not really registering those horizontal line breaks as much. So we're really drawing the eye to that whole top half. And it looks like she's got other stuff going on there too. You know, there's buttons, there's a button-up shirt underneath. We'll talk about that in the next video with styling tweaks, but this is a really great example of how you can create drama with volume versus fit. Now that you've seen how proportion in these isolated examples can change the way you use clothing, I would give you some homework for the end of this lesson, which is simply to focus on proportions when you're getting dressed. See what shapes you want to create, see what horizontal lines you want to play with in the outfit. And remember, waistlines, hemlines, they're not set in stone. Different waistlines are created when you leave a shirt untucked or tucked in, for example, or when you add a belt. You can also simply cuff your trousers and swap out the shoe for a similar color or a flesh-toned color to keep the vertical line going. Think of your clothes in terms of shapes and see what that does for you. Okay, I'll see you in the next lesson.